Hello, welcome back to the OMG MotoGP podcast. Remember me? It's been a while, hasn't it, Keith Ewan?
Who are you?
Yeah, I'm
Harry
the
Benjamin,
new
back
kid.
on the scene. You've been a little busy, I've got to say, mostly on four wheels, but Goodwood as
Oh.
well recently, which is a big outcome. How are you, Harry?
I'm good. I'm good. It's nice to be back. I'm sorry. I have still, I know I've not been on the podcasts, but for those who don't know, I do work behind the scenes to keep this show on the road. So I have been here keeping Keith in check, just not on the podcast. So, but we have an excellent team who are doing a wonderful job. But yeah, I have been doing something called Formula One, but that's not interesting right now. I'm good, and you're well. You're about to go. Well, actually, depending on when this releases, it might be you might be back by now. But you're about to go to Thailand, aren't you? So you're excited for that.
Yeah, I'm always Southeast Asian racetracks are my excuse, of course. Family is the other reason for being out there, but no, I'm looking forward to consistent sun and rain, which is all you get in Southeast Asia this time of the year.
Perfect. We may as well be back here then. It's the same. Right. Well, you mentioned Goodwood, which is where I once again stumbled across our latest guest on the OMG MotoGP podcast, Grace Webb. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello. Oh, thanks for having me. And yeah, we're recovered now after Festival of Speed because that is a long weekend with lots crammed in, isn't it?
It is an intense weekend. I think we all know the Goodwood Festival of Speed can be, one of the more stressful of the weekends. But you did some cool stuff though. We'll get stuck into that in a minute. But let's just address the elephant in the room, shall we? Tom Wheatcroft, the founder of Donington Park, you're his granddaughter, and I'm presuming you're now a TV presenter, motorbike expert. A lot of people will know you from the CBBC show. I'm presuming that is how you got a taste of the world of motorsport, or was there something else? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's very much a family connection. So, yeah, on my mum's side is the Donington Park family. So, yeah, Tom Wheatcroft is my granddad. And that, I suppose, was one of my first vivid memories of going to watch bike racing at Donington. So, Grandpa had a suite on Goddard's Corner, and we'd quite often go as a family to watch the racing. So I remember watching my first MotoGP race there, my first World Superbike race there, and I guess I didn't really realise at the time how fortunate I was to have that seat, really, and to be able to watch the races from there, because it was just grandpa, and that's just what we did. And whenever we'd arrive as a family, he'd welcome us in, give us a big hug. We'd get some food, and the drinks would be flowing. And little did I know, really, the likes of the people that were also mingling within that suite. Because I would have been quite young at the time, maybe like 10, 11, 12, would have been around when we went. So that kind of, I remember watching the races there, and it kind of just, yeah, lighting up my heart, really. And we would only really go to watch the bike racing, and I think that maybe came from more of my dad's side. So dad very much got into bikes, although he's actually a saloon car racer, is like his background. And he now works as an engineer. He's a V8 specialist. And growing up, he'd work from home, so there'd always be spanners, tools, engines making noises. There'd always be something about. So I guess from both sides of my family, there was always motorsport and a connection there. So I've always said it'd do one thing or the other. I'd either get involved with it myself, or it'd push me the opposite way because it'd be too much. But I actually took a career in teaching as the sort of my first main job, if you like. So my older sister worked in a nursery, and I sort of was inspired by her to get into childcare and education. So I took a degree in teaching. But actually, that sort of helped in a way as to lead into my first big job in TV, if you like. So that's kind of a bit of my background.
I have to tell you that a degree in teaching is perfect, keeping all the prima donnas and the childish people that you have to meet in a paddock and in broadcasting. It works perfectly, I would imagine. It's like herding cats. Your granddad, I mean, he was just the perfect entertainer. I mean, I love Tom. We used to frequent the suite as well, which had this wonderfully dated feel about it. Very modern facility when he first did that suite at Goddard's, but obviously, because I was still racing at that particular time, you would be invited in as a rider, and it had this sort of aura about it. And there was all famous pictures all around the walls and so on. They had security on the door, and you had to go downstairs into the suite, which was kind of the inner sanctum of Donington Park. And in the middle of it was this old boy, your granddad, who laughed like a braying donkey. I'd never heard anybody like Tom Wheatcroft for lighting up the nighttime. You'd be laying in your motorhome at 2:00 in the morning, and Tom would be frequenting the other hospitality units by now. He was actually a proper builder, wasn't he? I mean, you could tell by the way that he had that kind of sense of humour and that down to earth manner about him. But he knew how to properly socialise amongst all of the teams. And yet, Mandy Wheatcroft was a friend of mine. I mean, because she was at that time she was going out with a fellow called Benga Johansson, who was sidecar passenger world champion actually with Jock Taylor, the Scottish world champion in sidecar. So Mandy and Benga were together back in those days, and they were really, really, really good social times. People quite often ask about, you know, the good old days. I tend to avoid this particular phrase, but if you're gonna press me, you're not, but I'm going to say it anyway. Those were really great days, and your granddad was at the front of it all. It was the most social time you could have was with Tom Wheatcroft in the suite. He was brilliant. How aware were you of our fondness for your granddad?
Yeah, I mean, I remember quite a few of the things that you said well, especially his laugh and his presence. He definitely did have a great presence about him. Whether it was because I was young, I always remember him being quite tall and, like you say, loud, and he did have a presence. And it was great to see him at Donington doing his thing, doing his mingling, and for us, that was just what happened. But, you know, I feel very fortunate that I was able to spend Christmases with him and, you know, just be in the kitchen with him and do things like that. So it was always, you know, lovely to have his embrace as soon as we got there. And obviously with my mum being one of 7, there was quite a lot of grandchildren as well. And he loved us very much. And there'll always be some really fond memories that I've got.
How
Donington
lovely
went
to
through.
have that.
Oh, sorry, Harry.
No,
In.
I was just saying how lovely that is.
It is, of course. Family life is a wonderful thing at the end of the day, and when you've got someone patriarch like Tom at the head of it, I mean, it's I wonder, you know, Donington went through its trials and tribulations in the end. I mean, it was going to be a Formula One track again at one point, and so on. It got, you know, leases got passed around, and then Uncle Kevin, is it? He took over for a while as well before eventually that big bad person, as in Jonathan Palmer from MSVR, took a 21-year lease on the place. And Donington's back where it really should be now. And with JP at the helm, I would imagine that we are in for some quite interesting times, particularly if he starts fighting with Silverstone over the rights to MotoGP, which is just what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Well, he loves a bit of drama, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, I would have to agree with that in that we'd love to see MotoGP back at Donington. But like you say, yeah, it has gone through a few trials and tribulations, as you know. Grandpa did fight for what he could and to get Grand Prix racing there. And I know there's, as we all know, with a lot of industries, health and safety particularly in motorsport, is very extreme. So there was a lot of boxes to be able to tick to be able to have Grand Prix racing there. And I know he did what he could and he tried his best. And obviously, as Grandpa fell ill and eventually passed away, Uncle Kevin was the one who took it over and took the reins as such. And so it then went into lease with MSV, and now, you know, they're in charge of that, and we don't have as much connection with Donington now. I think, you know, with Grandpa being very much the captain of the ship and it was his baby, it's going to be hard to get anyone else to replicate that passion that he had for it, because he literally developed it to what we know Donington to be now. So yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see where the future goes for Donington. I'm forever grateful that I have the memories of the place that I do, and you know, I'm always a supporter of Donington and the family, and you know, everyone still talks, and so it will just be interesting to see where the future goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but what a legacy to have as well, and to be immensely proud of what is really an institution of motorsport now, isn't it? And laying the foundations for that all those years ago. But that's, I mean, what an environment to grow up in for a start, and then you begin to embark on your own journey into the broadcasting landscape from a fairly young age. And I think, well, we all know that broadcasting in general is a tough gig to get into. Motorsport is a hard graft, and opportunities aren't always massively available. But back in the day, there was a TV channel called Motors TV, which used to run all sorts of programming, left, right, and center, give loads of people a chance to just get on the screen. And they covered everything from grassroots motorsport through to, you know, top tier touring cars. And you did something on that. Was that one of your first kind of roles on the big screen?
Yeah. So if I kind of tell the story how, because quite often when I say, oh yeah, I trained to be a teacher, and they're like, well, how the hell did you get to what you're doing now if you were a teacher? So, and it kind of started, yeah, with Motors TV. So my two brothers raced for a championship called Thundersport, and they raced with Thundersport for many years. And when Freeview TV was popular and a thing, Motors TV filmed and, you know, displayed Thundersport as a championship on their channel. And Thundersport asked me, because I guess I was the annoying sister that would always go along and get involved somehow. So I'd always go along to the races and support them, whether it be, you know, changing their wheels, doing their pit board, just kind of getting involved where I could. Because I loved watching them race and supporting them doing what they loved. And it was just, the paddock was just a great place to be. So like I say, from being in Donington to then being at Donington with Thundersport, and they even did actually a support round for the MotoGP one year. So that was another way that we were at Donington as well, kind of supporting my brothers racing in a support race. So anyway, they'd race at all the major circuits across the UK, and I'd always go along to support them. And Thundersport asked me whether I would like to have a go at interviewing some of the riders as part of the televised program that was going to go on Motors. And for me, it was just like, I'd speak to a lot of people anyway, just because I was around, and you kind of, you know, had to make friends really. And as you guys probably know, the paddock family is an extension of your normal family, because you see these people all the time and you share the same passion and you talk about the same things. So I would speak to lots of people anyway. It would just mean that this time I had a camera with me. So I probably wasn't as nervous as they were. But So yeah, I did that for a few years, and that's when I was a student at uni. And got a bit of cash for doing it, and that was the best thing ever. Um, so so yeah, did that for a few years before eventually it kind of stopped being televised for Freeview and moved more online as sort of social media was kind of taking off. So yeah, I did that for about 2 years, and yeah, then embarked on my degree and my teaching career, and kind of yeah, didn't really think anything of it. But for those people who were riding at Thundersport, which was a club level championship, the riders found it really supportive to have that footage of them being interviewed, because they could display their sponsors on their leathers. It looked professional that they were being interviewed, and they would quite often use that footage in a way to promote themselves and get sponsorship. So quite often the riders would post clips of me interviewing them on their Facebook or on their YouTube. And about 6 years later from when I worked with Thundersport and Motors TV, a producer from the BBC saw a clip of me interviewing a rider and said that they were looking for a presenter for this children's show that was about machinery and motorsport, and would I like to try out for it? The show had already been, this children's show had already been aired for one series, with a lady called Katie Munnings presenting it, who's now an Extreme E rider, Extreme E driver, very successful rally career behind her. And for her, I think she was moving up in her rally career and had some amazing sponsorship offered to her. So she, I think, unfortunately for her, left the Amazing Machines series behind and chose to pursue more in her rally career, which was incredible for her. It created an opportunity for her, and then made an opportunity for me. So I got the job on the Amazing Machines series, and we ended up filming a further 4 series. I actually met her for the first time 2 years ago at Goodwood. And that it was one of those moments where we sort of both saw each other and was like, ah! So that was, that was really cool. And she's so lovely. And yeah, she deserves all the success she's got. She's an incredible driver and very talented on a microphone as well. So I wish her all the best with it. And but like I say, it kind of made an opportunity for me. And we then went on to film 4 series of Grace's Amazing Machines with the BBC, and I absolutely loved it. It was a great springboard for me, really, to collaborate my 2 passions of motorsport and education, with it being a children's show. Although I say it's a children's show, I do think from the responses I get from it that it's very much a family show. I love that parents will watch it with their children, and they'll talk about it and laugh about what's going on and discuss what's being shown, and I really like that about it, and I think has sort of helped me move into more of the television programs that are probably aimed more at adults. So I am forever grateful for the Amazing Machine path, because not only was it incredible to film and I've had some mind-blowing experiences from it, but it's also paved a way for me into motorsport television, really.
Rolling back to Thundersport, did you work with the legend that is Steve Day back in the day? Because it was his dad Richard, I think, that used to run Thundersport back in the day. So Stevie Day made his first appearances on TV doing exactly the same as your good self, and now he's obviously MotoGP, BSB, and elevating his position.
Yeah. Steve has done incredible, and yes, so he was one of the first people I co-presented with. It's so fun. We laugh about it now when we watch clips back of us presented in the Thundersport paddock. But you know, it was a great setup, and, you know, especially for him, you know, going on to, like you say, MotoGP and BSB. And actually, it's so refreshing to see quite a lot of BSB riders, and even moving into MotoGP. There's several riders that started at Thundersport. You know, I remember interviewing Jake Dixon, who's now obviously a Moto2 rider. I even, you know, with the likes of Ryan Vickers and Chrissy Rouse, a lot of the incredible riders that have graced the British Superbike paddock started in Thundersport, and it's really wonderful to have been a part of the Thundersport paddock and to see people's careers grow. And actually, it's been great to see so many riders that started out in Thundersport move into elite motorsport careers. I mean, you know, Jake Dixon started out in Thundersport, who's now obviously a Moto2 rider. But, you know, even the likes of Ryan Vickers, Rory Skinner, so many of these incredible riders started out at Thundersport, and, you know, have so many great memories of interviewing them when they were half the size of what they are now, as super teens or 450 riders. And to see their careers climb like that has been brilliant, and it's something that me and Steve Day quite often speak about. And even for us, that kind of came back around. You know, our careers started at Thundersport, and we've not actually worked together again since this year's TT, where we were both working together, and we were like, oh my god, this is great. So yeah, it's Thundersport, although unfortunately isn't with us anymore. It has been, I think, a brilliant rock in the motorsport paddock, because it was a great springboard for a lot of riders' careers.
What a launch pad for yeah, on track and off it, isn't it? You mentioned Isle of Man, which you've done the last couple of years though, and Keith's been there too. What the experience of Isle of Man TT in the last year? I mean, we just got back from Goodwood, haven't we, and celebrating Michael Dunlop's amazing achievements.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I've worked on the TT broadcast team now for the past 2 years, and I've always watched the TT online or on the television, but I've never actually been myself until I worked there for the first time last year. And you think they look quick on a screen, and then you see it in real life, and you're just like, it literally blows you away, quite literally. It's definitely a bucket list thing to do, and I think once you've ticked it off your bucket list, you get hooked and you want to keep going year on year. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that I can go back now in a work capacity and be really within the mix of what's going on, and see it so close. But I mean, that's the beauty of it for many spectators, that you can be a matter of feet away. But for me, it was such an honor, particularly this year, you know, to be the first to interview Michael Dunlop after his record-breaking TT, and is now the most successful TT rider in history. To be the first person to speak to him and get his reactions after that was just, yeah, the highlight of my career.
What a brilliant moment to have as well. On the Goodwood stuff, I mean, we had a long few days, but actually, Keith, have you ever ridden anything up the hill at Goodwood? Have you ever done a bike up the hill?
A couple of hire cars.
So Grace has got one up on you, because what did you ride up the hill? Yeah, nah. What did you ride up the hill?
So this year I took a Triumph Thruxton, their final edition version, which looked very glorious in the sunshine. Yeah, I played it well this year that I managed to get a dry run. Last year, I also took a Triumph up the hill, one of their Moto2 edition bikes, but that was wet. And not even a little bit wet, it was swamp wet. So this year,
Oh my
I
God.
managed to play my cards right and get a dry run. So yeah, that was loads of fun.
And you've got Aprilia at home, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the bike I own personally is an Aprilia. I have an RRV 450, which is quite an unusual bike and is sort of a link back to Thundersport because the RRV 450 was actually a purpose-built track bike for a one-make series that ran at Thundersport, and the the SXV 450, which is like a supermoto bike, which it's based on, was sent from Aprilia to a company called In Competition, who actually run a BSB team now and were at the TT this year. But they were the people that developed the RRB 450 and made it into what it is. And then they ran in this one make series. But for some reason, the bike that I purchased took a detour from Aprilia to a shop floor and ended up getting itself a V5 and a logbook, and then went to In Competition to be developed and then was raced. So that particular bike, because it had a V5 and a logbook, is now the only road legal RRV 450, and that's the one that I own, which is so cool. So
Wow.
so it's got a number plate and some indicators and a horn, which I think is what it legally needs to have a daytime MOT on it. So I do sometimes take it out on the road. It's mainly track focused, so I do ride it on track, but it is also capable and is the only RRB 450 that is capable to be ridden on the road legally, and that's what I love about it, that it's so unique and that no one else will be legally, I like to keep adding that word in, legally be riding it on the road. So yeah, I like the attention that it gets and that it's a bit different.
I think she beats you. Have you not got any bikes in your garage, Keith?
I'm very fortunate. People still give me motorbikes to ride if I fancy one. So and the attention that I'm not interested in attention, because the attention I always get is blue light. So we try to avoid that as much as we can. Thank you very much. But I don't do any track days anymore. No, I mean it's something that I was talking with Stuart Pringle about the other day. It's one of them situations where in the end, ambition is definitely much higher than talent at a certain stage in your life. And the saddest thing about racing motorbikes at a high level is that at the end of the day, and this goes for any sport, I suppose, really, at the end of the day, you're never going to be as good as you once were. And that is a sad fact of life. It will come to you too as well, you youngsters.
Yeah. Sorry, Keith. Look, we've taken up so much of your time already, Grace. I know you're very busy with so many different things, but we can't let you go, and we can't let you come on the OMG MotoGP podcast without chatting at least a little bit of MotoGP. So have you been keeping up to speed with this season? I know you're going to the British Grand Prix as well. What have you made so far of this season?
Yeah, I have been keeping up to date. So this year I actually treated myself to the MotoGP video pass, so I can watch it on the go on my phone. So yeah, I have been keeping up to date. It's been
That is not an advert.
It's been a great championship so far. Me and my family actually really get into it with MotoGP. So we have a family fantasy league. So there's money at stake here as well. You pick your sort of gold riders and silver riders, and you can boost a rider, or you can pick which team you want. So yeah, it gets quite competitive in our family. But yeah, I mean, I think some things that I've been really impressed with, I guess, is Pedro Acosta's start to the year. I think everyone was blown away by his performance at the beginning of the year. I hope that does continue for him. I know the past few rounds haven't really gone his way, but I think we all want to see him do well. It has also been absolutely fantastic to see Marc Marquez's performance on the Gresini Ducati. he's just Marc Marquez, isn't he? Like, he's an uber talented rider, but to see him enjoy his riding and, you know, perform on the podium like he has done, I think has been so refreshing, and is the Marc Marquez that everyone wants to see. Can anyone stop Bagnaia? Maybe Jorge Martin. That, I think that'll just go down to the wire, that battle between them two. So yeah, I'll definitely be keeping posted for sure for the rest of the round. And yeah, like you say, to be able to go to Silverstone and watch it in person, it is going to be amazing. So I'm really excited to see how that round pans out after the summer break. So will you guys be going?
I am. Keith's missing it though.
First time in 40 odd years. My biggest concern at the moment is married life. You know, will Pecco Bagnaia be the same man now that he's a married man when it comes to the British Grand Prix? Will there be any influence from that side of things? That looked like the guest list that we all needed to be on. Bagnaia's bloody wedding. It was just wonderful.
Yeah.
Look, we'll be back next week with more MotoGP chat. And actually, somebody stopped me in the street the other day. Got recognised, but he was the MotoGP fan, and he was asking me all this stuff about. He was asking me who I wanted to win, and I said I did say Jorge Martin. I was like, "There's just something. I just feel like he deserves it. He deserves a win.
Yeah,
title."
But what gave it away is when he asked you when the DRS was going to open on a Ducati.
Yeah. Well, the way Aero's going in MotoGP, it won't be far off, will it? Look, we digress. But honestly, Grace, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story and your background and where you're coming from. And I think if people haven't obviously seen, people who have children under a certain age will definitely know who you are. But the Isle of Man TT coverage is exceptional. Goodwood as well. So thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to seeing what's next on the horizon for you.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you having me on, and all the best for the rest of the season.